Hannah, how are you? Great to see
Hey,
you.
you too, you too. Finish what you were saying.
All right, awesome. Happy Friday. Excited.
Happy Friday to you too. Thanks for having me here.
All right. Well, I think a lot of the people in our group already know you because you've been live a couple times in the NomadX community. If you go to the NomadX website, you can also find Hannah there. We have her as an affiliate of NomadX, and she helps train virtual assistants all around the world. She's trained, I think she said, 12,000 digital nomad assistants. She has her 5-day virtual assistant challenge coming up this next week, February 22nd to 26th. And I think you said you already have 800 people registered, if I'm right. Is that correct?
900 now.
900. Okay. I thought that sounded like a lot. I was thinking maybe that information was wrong, but 900, that's amazing.
No. It's been so busy the last couple of years. Oh, I guess since the pandemic hit, I think so many more people are looking for ways to work remotely, and they're finally catching on to this digital nomad idea. And yeah, it's been blowing up.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I think, yeah, for this interview today, we're really going to focus on this, the virtual assistants, the 5-day challenge. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about some of your other activities you've been involved in. But yeah, just to kick things off, let's tell everyone what's up with this 5-day challenge. What's involved with it? What do they need to do to sign up? Where do they go? Give us the rundown.
Sure, awesome. So the 5-day VA challenge is a free 5-day course. I've been running it for a few years now. And we always tweak and refine it to make sure it's the best it can possibly be. And what it is, it's 5 days to get you set up as a virtual assistant. Now, that isn't going to promise you like you're going to be able to completely run your business from that. But what it does give you is a really good groundwork to work from. So you get to figure out what services you can sell now and identifying skills that you have that you can turn into services. That's probably more important to know. So a lot of people come to us and they say, well, I don't know, is this really for me? And that's what the challenge is about. They come in the first day, they identify what existing skills they have, how they could set them up as a service online, and who to sell those services to. Then we move through, and I'm not going to give too much away because a lot of the tasks are kind of surprises, I guess, because we tailor it to each group, which is also one of the reasons it's so much fun. But yeah, so some of the tasks will take you through some scary stuff where you actually reach out and potentially get clients. A lot of people do get clients from that first week, which is quite a shock for some people. They're like, oh, I got the client, now what? But all the questions are answered. There's lots of Q&A sessions with myself in there. Lots of scary stuff that takes outside your comfort zone, but within a really supportive community with lots of really experienced VAs to chime in and give feedback along the way. That's a little bit about it.
So it takes place, my understanding, it takes place over 5 days. It's an hour long, right?
Yes, so it's at your own convenience though. So the lesson drops every day at one time, but you don't have to be there at that time. You can take that, whatever time suits you. If you have a full-time job, if you have kids or whatever, you can fit it into a day as needed. So it's just about an hour you need to set aside to do that each day.
Cool. We've got a lot of people jumping in the stream here, and we've got a few questions from some people. Even my buddy Rich just got in here, which he's never joined us before. He's not a digital nomad. He's just a friend of mine.
Curious.
Yeah, we've got Kim Gorks. She was saying, whoop, whoop, so excited for all the challengers. We have always such a cool vibe in there. We have Naomi Chapman. You're the best challenge ever. I don't know if you know Naomi.
Thank you.
Kim Gorks. There's always so much different characters and backgrounds of people in there. I think it's one of my favorite parts. So yeah, everyone really enjoys your virtual assistant programs. Yeah, I've been super impressed with it. One of the things I thought was interesting too was that trying to help people kind of avoid the pitfalls. I saw on your website you're talking about more of a master mindset, not so much about getting jobs on Upwork, but really trying to elevate yourself and get paid more of a premium for your services. Maybe you can just tell us a bit about that, because I found that really interesting. Because when people think virtual assistants, sometimes you're thinking Philippines or, what is the profile of these virtual assistants, and what kind of work do they typically do for people? Maybe just give us some insights. I think we have a lot of virtual assistants in the community, but I think there's a lot of people that could also benefit, whether it's hiring virtual assistants or even becoming one themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So a virtual assistant, if you just look at the terminology itself, virtually assisting someone, that could mean anything. And that's really how wide the scope is when it comes to doing this kind of work. And I think it was on the NomadX Clubhouse chat last Friday, Mitko said something really interesting that I really took on, and was like, he said, it's a little bit like being a doctor. You could be a doctor and you could be a general VA, or you could specialize. You could be a brain surgeon / you could be someone who specializes in funnel creation. And so you can really take it in many different ways. But I'd say the main avenues are sort of within general administrative work, creative work, or tech work. And then there's a lot of overlap, and you can go in many, many ways from there. So in terms of what you can do, it's pretty endless. And I think that a lot of people, when they're approaching the idea of becoming a virtual assistant, a lot of them are still holding on to this, the term assistant in what we think that means in a sort of traditional work trajectory. So we're thinking like, okay, that's someone who works for someone in an office. You get a set amount of pay, you have a set amount of tasks, and you're kind of stable within that. So actually, there's pros and cons to it. I like to think it's definitely more pros. You have a lot more freedom as a virtual assistant because you're actually building a business. And I think this is the thing. This is one of the big pitfalls that I see people falling into, is treating it like it's just you're applying for jobs, right? And I always say my favorite phrase is stop applying for jobs, start creating opportunities. So when you're a virtual assistant, you have to be the person in charge of marketing, the person in charge of sales, the person in charge of your bookkeeping at the start, for sure. So pretty much you wear a lot of hats, and I think people don't step into the mindset that you need in order to fulfill those roles. It's not applying for jobs. It's not going on to Upwork. It is a part of that, but you can't rely on just applying for jobs and sitting back and hoping that someone's going to pick you. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be visible. You have to stand out. You have to build a brand. You have to network. I think that's a really big one, networking. People don't realize the power of that. And I get it. It's like something that's very difficult to do if you're an introvert. A lot of VAs tend to be more introverted just by default. People don't really want to be in the center stage. They want to be behind the scenes doing the stuff. But there is an element of just having to push through and still show up, because that's how you connect with people remotely. So I think some of the biggest pitfalls are definitely surrounding mindset and stepping into that role fully as a business owner.
Cool. Yeah, I could definitely see that. So I was reading here too that it's not just for new VAs. It could be for existing virtual assistants that are looking to kind of level up on their skills. So just for the community out there, it's not just for new VAs or the kind of the rookies, but it's also, for VAs that are looking to improve their skill sets, if I'm correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we do get a lot of people coming through us who have said, like, I've been doing this for a year and like I'm sort of stuck at this level of income, or I have all these clients, but I can't level up from here, or like, and normally they come through us and they're trying to figure out like a niche, or they're trying to figure out how they can charge more, or they can package their services differently. So it's definitely really helpful if you just need a little bit of a refocus, redirection, maybe even just to network with some other really cool VAs and grow that network.
Cool. Are there any like prerequisites or requirements for the program?
Yes, but they're very small. You need to have a laptop, a smartphone would be ideal, and access to good Wi-Fi and a good attitude. That's pretty much it.
All right. So this lifestyle, what I've noticed, and I never really thought about this a whole lot, but it's a great way to get started as a digital nomad, or just become location independent. Even if you start the business from home, you can basically take the job on the road with you. So I think that's another thing that's really desirable about the virtual assistant, profession, is that, it is very flexible, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's so many ways you can take it. It's such a good entry point into remote work, especially if you don't want to just have a remote job, for example. If you really want to be self-employed and start building something for yourself, this is a great entry point. Even if, let's say, your end goal is I want to be a coach, or I want to be a course creator, like and that was my case, like I'm now creating courses about this. But it's a really good springboard for so many different directions you might want to work in, because you can then work in those industries, much like you would you work your way up in different job roles, but you can do that within different industries online. So you can learn a lot, and then you can implement, and you can also do the service-based stuff while having courses, while having affiliate income. There's so many different ways to make money just by getting started and selling services with the skills you already have. It's just, I find it one of the easiest ways to jump into remote work.
Cool. So just for everyone who's joining us, we're with Hannah Dixon. She's the founder at Digital Nomad Kit. And if you want to find her online, just visit her at digitalnomadkit.com, or Instagram, it's at Digital Nomad Kit, if that's right.
Correct.
And we're talking about the 5-day virtual assistant challenge that's starting next week for 5 days, 1 hour per day. And it's a free program to get started. And we're just trying to promote that at the moment. So if you or any of your friends are looking to become a virtual assistant, you're looking to get on the road, become location independent, this is a great opportunity for it. Hannah's a real legend in this category. She's been doing it now for the last 5 years. And I found it interesting. I didn't realize that you've really been a digital nomad for quite a long time. I was reading, I think you said you've been 13 years as a digital nomad. You speak at a lot of the conferences, you've been panelists, you travel on the topics of travel and also on the topics of entrepreneurship as well. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, kind of reading through your bio, is not just about creating virtual assistants, but being very ethical as it relates to the pay, the diversity, and creating meaningful communities. So maybe tell us a bit about that, because it's not just once you create the virtual assistant, they're off, but you also have a whole community, right? You've got a really thriving community and people really stay connected.
Yeah, I mean, part of the community stuff, I built my business on community from the beginning. That was always really important to me. When I started as a virtual assistant myself. My first gig was $5. It was like on some gig website. I don't remember which one it was, but it took me like 3 days. It was $5, and I was like so angry at the end that someone was willing to pay me $5 for those 3 days that I was even like, why didn't you take that on? And that was okay. And then I realized there's a real problem in this space before I even got really into it. But I started my virtual assistant business, and when I did that, I didn't know what a digital nomad was. I didn't know what a virtual assistant was. I just knew that like I could probably sell some services online. And I started a community because, and this is, I guess, what moves into the diversity thing, is I started a community because I wasn't seeing other queer people. I just wasn't seeing people that I identified with very often. So I was like, I'm going to start a community, and I'm going to just bring those people in. And so that's kind of how my larger Facebook group started, my free Facebook group called Next Level Virtual Assistants. It was called something very different back then, but it's evolved over the years. And from that, I really just got into the idea of like, I just want to manage communities. And that's always been at the core of whatever I do. So even now with my paid programs, the community aspect of those programs, I think is way more powerful than any of the courses. The courses are great, don't get me wrong. But the community aspect is so strong. There are like so many people meeting up in person. And how would I say that in a way that doesn't make me look like a bit of a dick? I would say that what it's done for me personally is it's helped me create a really loyal following, which has really helped me in my career development, because whenever I want to go in a different direction, I have people supporting and lifting me up because they trust in what I'm doing, because they feel a part of it. So what I'm now trying to move into as well on the other side is helping people build more meaningful communities. And I think you're doing a really good job of that here at NomadX. You're really involving a lot of people. You yourself are like a super connector. I was just talking to my partner and saying that Dave is like a super connector. Like I really in admiration of how you connect people and how, you know, what you're doing on Clubhouse, and you bring in a community together. So I think you're a really good example of that, and that's like something I want to move it into more. But that's always been the backbone of what we do. And then the diversity element just comes really quite naturally to me as someone who comes from I wouldn't say a minority, but, you know, I'm gay, I'm a woman. It's, you know, I've had some situations that have come up that may not have happened for other people, and I can identify with other people and people can identify with me. So I think naturally I've veered towards making that a priority. And in terms of ethics in the hiring space, but I could talk about that for hours. Actually, something came up just yesterday. There's just a lot of, I think we're at a very pivotal point in humanity, actually, not just in the online space, of where inclusivity and diversity and all this accessibility is so much more important than ever. And we're all having to start changing things and relearning the way we look at things. And I think that that's going to also be really changing in the remote space. And while I've been harping on about this for years, I think it's now more important than ever. And this idea of like modern slavery, and how actually just by saying I want to hire from the Philippines, you're literally, just by saying that already equates to I want to pay less, or I'm not valuing the skills that this person has. So we could talk about this is a whole long thing. I could go on a big long tangent, but yeah, I'm very big on ethical hiring practices. So if that's something anyone's interested in, feel free to reach out to me. I've plenty of resources.
That's really great, Hannah. It's awesome. Yeah, we really think that's super important. I think, yeah, here at NomadX, we try and exert those virtues as well, and run a conscious business and be conscious not only of the people, but the vendors and who we're working with and the communities where we live and work. We just feel like that's the future coming out of this pandemic, hopefully, is kind of an awakening of some sorts.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, we're super hopeful for that. Yeah, I was kind of doing a little bit more research on you, and it sounds like you've been to a lot of places all throughout the world. I was reading that you had like some awesome experiences in Budapest, for example. Is that still your favorite spot, or where are the top spots around the world these days?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Budapest. Yeah, I guess it's still one of my favorite places. I'm really tied to Thailand, as much as that's a big cliche in the nomad space. I'm really, really very much, my heart is there. So I'm actually going to be moving there in probably June again, and I'm going to get a home base there. That's my plan. Like with this COVID stuff, I'm like, hey, it'd be nice to have a place that I could just go to if the world goes to shit. Like I would like to just have a place. So I'm going to be heading over back to Bangkok. Big fan of that. Colombia is great. And Portugal's great, Lisbon's great, as you know. But yeah, Budapest stole my heart, but I can't see myself living there or, spending too much time there anymore in the future. I think it's just very difficult right now with what's going on.
Cool. Well, I was reading, it was interesting. It sounded like you had a business that was focused a lot on maybe web development and SEO. That was your first business, that's my understanding, online. It was a little bit of a shit show from some of the stuff I was reading. And that's how this business evolved. So maybe just tell us a little story, your pathway to becoming a virtual assistant through that business. I thought it was like a nice pivot, it sounded like.
So maybe it's more interesting to find out how I got into that business and then how that evolved, because I think I'm interested in that story. I actually traveled a lot via work exchanges. I don't know if you know Workaway, HelpX, what's the other one? Woofing, that kind of stuff. I did that for a long time. I kind of bummed my way around Europe and a little bit of Asia with that, basically with no money for about 7 years. And I got to a point where I was in Italy and I was working on a construction site, because clearly I'm a construction worker. And I was working on this thing, cementing and plastering and doing all this stuff. And I used to work in fashion a hell of a long time ago, really, really long time ago, way back in the past. And I had friends who lived in Milan and from that time, and they'd invited me to a party a couple of weeks later. So I hopped on a train up to Milan. We were about to go out, and they look at me, they're like, "What are you wearing?" And I was like, "This." My shoes were like literally like squares of concrete, and it's just like, and I was like, oh damn, I can't even afford new shoes. Like something's got to change in my life. Like this has been really fun, but I'm realizing that I need some money. So I went back to the UK, which is where I grew up, and I started working in a bar or something like that. I can't even remember, some job that I didn't really care about. And I met someone online who was working in SEO and web development, and all that stood out when they told me that was, I work online. And I was like, tell me more. I can travel with that, right? And they were like, yeah. I was like, teach me everything you know. And this ended up being my first business partner. Teach me everything you know. And I, by default, became the person who did the emails and the correspondence. And I updated the Twitter account. And I took phone calls and did all this administrative stuff that I didn't really realize at that point. I was basically becoming a virtual assistant in that moment. And that business didn't really go very well. We took on way too much work and got ahead of ourselves, and it was a mess. But through that, I realized that I was really good at doing a lot of that behind the scenes stuff. And as the business was crumbling, I was getting more clients doing the VA stuff. And so it was like a nice, kind of easy, difficult-ish, still had money coming in, transition into virtual assistants. I started realizing what a virtual assistant was, created the community. I started landing some pretty big clients, lots of big doctors in the US. I was making quite a lot of money, and then people were asking me, how are you doing this? And then skip forward a few years, here I am today. So that's been my journey.
All right. How long were you doing the virtual assistants on your own before starting the virtual assistant business with the, the training?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting because I think, for a lot of the people out there, whether you're entrepreneurs or you've done something entrepreneurial before or you're considering it, I always think, it's just the best thing just to dive into it, get started. Because I think what Hannah said is you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. And then a lot of times, if that's not the right opportunity, you start identifying other opportunities like Hannah did with a virtual assistant. Next thing you know, she's pivoting into that. Next thing you know, she's got 12,000 people she's trained. And do you guys have a platform where you connect the virtual assistants to customers or agencies as well? Is that part of the business?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably on the smaller side of the business right now. It's something we've been moving into. We have a matchmaking, we have like a form you can fill in that auto-populates a job ad that goes out to our graduates, or there's a private matchmaking service that I do personally right now. We're looking at sort of making that a bit bigger as we're getting a lot more demand now, but it's been working pretty good for the last year.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about it. I was like, wow, that's like an amazing opportunity. I don't want to blow your cover here on national TV. But I think I was like, I need to team up with Hannah. We need to get some techies to build this thing, because it could be like the next Upwork for VAs. But yeah, I think that's awesome. So yeah, the career trajectory is really nice. You speak at a lot of the conferences. You're very well known in the industry, and you've got a great reputation. And the people that you've helped, they really, really like you. And a lot of them have joined our community just because of you. You're being interviewed on here with some of the previous interviews. So yeah, if anyone out there has any questions, feel free to comment or hit the like button. But yeah, we're here with Hannah Dixon, the founder of the digitalnomadkit.com, talking about 5-day virtual assistant challenge starting next week for 5 days, February 22nd to 26th. And let's see here. So I've gone through a bunch of these questions. I was also looking through your LinkedIn profile, and I was impressed because it looks like
you did some stalking before this.
I've stalked you, Hannah. Don't worry, not too much. Just at the surface level. I haven't dug too deep yet. So yeah, if anyone wants to find anything about Hannah, you can just ask me. But yeah, I was really impressed with a lot of the volunteer activities that you've been doing, and I saw like Raleigh International, and then this other group, 7 in 7. Sounds like it's the more recent one. But maybe tell us a bit about the volunteer work that you do, because I think a lot of the nomads are looking to get into volunteerism. And maybe, I'd love to hear your story as it relates to this.
Sure. With the Raleigh International, that was a while back now. It was a few years ago. But what that was actually an exchange program where they were sending people from the UK to very small villages in India, and we were teaming up with local volunteers, and we were implementing, so we were doing surveys in these villages. What did they really need assistance with? I actually was in charge of budgeting, which was a terrible idea. And we had a budget where we could basically implement what they needed. What they needed were bathrooms for the women to change in. And we did a big health report, and we did a lot of health training on just general like hygiene standards and that kind of stuff. And actually what was cool was working with the local volunteers. We got to understand the best way to get our message across that people would really listen to. And so that was actually through because a lot of them didn't read or write and hadn't really integrated with society. There were still people that lived basically in the jungle, the people that we were working with. And it was really difficult because actually the government had recently changed the rules to say that people were no longer allowed to live off the land in that way. They had to live in actual housing. So what they did was the government built them all housing and then just dropped them there and said, didn't give them any resources. So we came in with the local volunteers to kind of help them acclimatize to that. So the best way for them to learn all this stuff was through theater and dance, because that was the only way that we could communicate. So we had a big theater group come in to sort of communicate a lot of what we were trying to teach them. So that was really interesting. Definitely I had a lot of issues with some of the ways that went down, but overall it was a good experience. And 7 in 7 is actually a conference. It's a digital nomad conference. I'm not working with them anymore, but I was for 3 years. So I was volunteering, just doing their social media for 3 years, and helping them out with a lot of their marketing stuff and that kind of stuff.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, well, I think, that's inspiring. I think for the nomads out there, not just the traveling, doing your work, but really integrating with the community, giving back. I feel like that's super important as part of the nomad culture, is just, as we travel the world, to try and give back and be conscious in the way we approach things. So I feel like that's super important. So yeah, maybe a few questions here that I got left for you. And I'm really sort of interesting. Are there any plans that you have for your business here in the next year, 2021, 2022? What can we expect from Digital Nomad Kit? What's the future hold?
I've been thinking about that myself recently. No, actually one of the things I want to do is, because I've been running this 5-day VA challenge for so long, I actually want to move into helping people run challenge launches. because I have such a cool structure for it now, and I think that there are so many business models this could work for. So that's something I'm looking at doing. I just joined a mastermind, so I guess soon I'll have some ideas to mastermind out. But yeah, I'm kind of at a crossroads where I know I need to do a few new things, and I'm struggling with where to take it. But definitely the 5-day challenge or something like that, some sort of group program maybe. And I think a lot of my goals this year are very personal. I want to get myself back to Asia. I may or may not be getting married soon. So there's like a lot of personal stuff going on. And I feel really grateful that I'm in a place that my business allows me to just focus on that this year. But yeah, there'll be a few new things. I'm just not quite there yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah, make sure, for all y'all, check out Hannah on the web. I was talking to her the other day, and unfortunately, I think there was someone out there who ripped off all of your content and created like a duplicate website. And you were, when I contacted you, you were in a little bit of a panic mode because you were sending out cease and desist letters.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's been happening a lot lately. I actually got a message this morning from like a random person on Instagram mentioning the name of a friend of mine, an entrepreneur, saying, I have their course if you would like a copy even cheaper. And I looked on the thing and it was like, we have thousands of courses. It's so prominent now. There's so many people doing that. It's very shitty.
Yeah, so for you guys out there, make sure you've got the real Hannah Dixon, not the other one. Maybe she looks like you. I don't know, but I think this is the real, this is the official Hannah Dixon that we have here live, not the other one or the other ones that are out there. So we're dealing with this pandemic. We're hoping this thing's going to be over pretty soon. I mean, sometime hopefully this year, definitely I think by next year.
Yeah.
What does the future hold for this digital nomadism and remote work? Like, where do you see things going in the industry? You've been in the industry for so long. I'm sure you have a good perspective.
I think that people are going to I think people were slowing down already. I don't think that travel is going to stop. I think people are going to be more intentional about how they travel, where they travel, why they're traveling. And I do think there'll be a hell of a lot more people getting home bases and trying to get, like, one of the things I noticed with a lot of people in my immediate friend group was a lot of issues related to not having a residency somewhere, like when all this stuff went down, and like not having government assistance, or not, there was a lot of things that were happening with people. So I think that people are going to be seeking a little bit more security, but maybe not still in the traditional sense. But like myself, I'm going to go get a home base in Bangkok and get myself a visa for 5 years there. So I know I have a place there. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to travel. I'll probably just be more intentional. Like if there's an event I want to speak at, if there's a networking thing I want to go hang out with some people there. If I'm going for like 3 to 6 months and I know that I can like be there for that time. I think a lot more people are just going to go slower and be more intentional and seeking a little bit more security in some ways.
Cool.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I've been in the digital industry for a long time, really since like the 90s. So I'm a real dinosaur. But yeah, I grew up in the industry. I love the industry. I think it's amazing. I've seen it go through a lot of transformations. But I think at this moment, we're in the midst of the biggest transformation of all, because we kind of had the search wave, we had the social wave, we had the mobile wave. We're waiting for mobile to hit for such a long time. And then it really allowed, and then we've got, fast internet connection. We have, SpaceX, for example, with their Starlink program. They're going to be delivering internet anywhere throughout the world, which I think is going to be amazing.
Yes.
So I think coming out of this pandemic, I think people are going to be much more conscious, as I was saying before, much more conscious as it relates to their business, the businesses that they work with, how they treat their vendors, how they treat their employees. And I think people are just looking for something more inspirational from businesses these days. So I think coming off this, we're seeing a lot of people at the moment that are, living the nomadic lifestyle, the remote works, but they might just be 2 hours away from their homes in a mountain town or beach town somewhere. But I think we're really starting to see is we want those people to start taking their jobs on the road. And we expect like a massive shift in this industry. I think it's been a very early adopter industry, and it's going to be huge coming off the pandemic. So I think it's really going to be a transformational time throughout the world, and just making the world so much more connected, not only through technology, but through your physical presence. And so I think it's a really interesting time. I think for our business, obviously we're getting crushed right now because no one's traveling. So it's like, I'm a little bit like just treading water and just trying to stay alive for when the pandemic is over. But I think a lot of people are in the same situation. Some people are really thriving at the moment, if they're in e-commerce, and then I'm sure there's tons of people wanting to be virtual assistants. So I think your business is super well positioned. I think maybe next time we speak, you'll have 100,000 virtual assistants under your belt. But but yeah, we're trying to keep these pretty short. We're kind of getting towards the end here. We've really enjoyed having you on the show, Hannah. I think you have an amazing background, a really great story. The work that you're doing is amazing. I think the values you have in your company are really great. Yeah, but before we leave here, I was just wondering, do you have any special offer or tip for anyone in the community? Just as a final parting thought would be awesome.
I mean, the offer is join the challenge next week. It's free. You're going to have a hell of a time whether you decide to become a virtual assistant or not. You'll learn a lot about yourself. You'll learn a lot about what your space could be in the online remote work scene. I think that even if you don't intend to be a virtual assistant and you've got time on your hands, it's worth doing. We have people go through it who end up being healers, coaches, course creators. It will really help you get out of your head and start thinking about how you can utilize what you've got. So I encourage you to join us at whatever stage you're at if you have the time. And if I had any words to leave, I would say, what would I say? I have a lot of things I say. I would say if you've been sitting on an idea for a while and just sitting on it, then just come next week, because I think that you'll be really surprised at what can flourish from that idea when you're in the right group of people who are all on the same sort of mindset. So I would say, just like, if you've been sitting on an idea, like, get out of that sort of paralysis and start moving. And even if it just means just showing up next week and listening, I think that you'll find some big movements happening, some big changes happening. And I guess, like, if you don't join, like, stop sitting on the idea. Like, now is the best time ever to start trying stuff. There's nothing to lose. And I always say there's a bittersweet truth. When you're starting something new, you have all the space. Can I curse? Is it okay if I curse?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I don't curse that much, but every once in a while I do.
This is just the best way to explain it. So when you're starting any new business and you're starting in a new industry entirely, and you're the kind of person who's a perfectionist, so you're like, oh, the logo needs to be the right color, or this needs to happen, or that, like, drop that. You know why? Because the bittersweet truth is no one is watching you, no one gives a shit at the beginning. And that sounds horrible, but it actually means you have all the space in the world to fuck up. And you can try things, and when you try things, doors open. Just like we were talking about earlier, as soon as you start, more doors start opening, more ideas start coming to you, more opportunities start coming to you, and you realize the potential in this new path you've taken. So that would be probably my thing that I'm big.
Yeah, the key is just to get started, you all. So I think for everyone out there, you've got an idea, you're talking to your friends, your family, and blah, blah, blah. Well, now it's time. We're in this pandemic. This is the best time you could ever have to get started with a new business. It takes a little bit of time to get started now. Listen to Hannah. She knows what she's talking about. One thing I wanted to say before I left, because I was going to mention this earlier, but I forgot, but my assistant that I hired, my virtual assistant that I hired at NomadX, actually, she was so good, I ended up putting her in charge of all the operations for our housing platform. Oh, no. So it's like, I mean, these virtual assistant jobs are a great foot in the door. You do, and generally you're working with a lot of the top executives. You do a great job with the executives. Yep. You know, eventually you kind of even end up in a top position of the company if that's what you want. Maybe you don't want that because maybe it's more stressful, but I think it does provide an entry path into the organization at a very high level. And, you know, or you can just keep doing the virtual assistant work, which I think is awesome. And I think so many of the entrepreneurs out there, even corporate executives, you know, entrepreneurial executives, just anyone who's got a business they've started and they've been doing it on their own, having an assistant is huge because you can offload a lot of work to them, a lot of the administrative work, free yourself up to be much more strategic, actually in the business. You're working on the business versus working in the business. So I think there's so much value in it. I think this is going to be a huge movement. It already has been, but I think it's even going to be much bigger. Hannah's at the forefront of this. You're going to be on Forbes magazine here pretty soon. So we'll have to dig up this recording. And yeah, we're just super excited to have you here. We're really happy. We're really impressed with everything that you're doing, and it's just been great to have you affiliated with NomadX. And yeah, we're just looking forward to future lives. And for all of you out there, we are about to close down, but this is a great interview with Hannah Dixon, the founder of digitalnomadkit.com. Check it out on Instagram at Digital Nomad Kit. She's got the free 5-day challenge next week. Definitely make time for it. It could change your life. And just super happy to have you, Hannah. Have a great day.
I'm really
I'll see you on Clubhouse at 5. So for those of you out there,
absolutely, everyone join on Clubhouse.
Yeah, you can ask Hannah all the questions you want then. So without further ado, thank you so much, Hannah. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right.
Great to see you.
Cheers.
Bye.